My name is Tommaso Amico di Meane from Uniterma Sapienza University of Rome, and today we have the pleasure to have Uday Shankar, Professor of Law of the Indian Institute of Technology of Charangar, West Bengala. He comes directly from India, and for us is a great opportunity to have him here. So welcome, Professor, first of all. Thank you for being here. And we want to take the opportunity to discuss with you about Indian constitutional law. We know something about India, but I personally did a lot of many studies in India, and I know how interesting is the institutional experience and the constitutional path of India. So it would be nice to have some comments and some information from you about the form of government of India and perhaps also the form of state, because we know that it's a very original experience that could also be taken into connect with European experience. So there is a lot of to discuss about also in comparative perspective. So I would start from this.
Thank you, Professor Tommaso, for extending this opportunity to me. And it's truly a matter of privilege for me to interact with you on Indian constitutional law. And I know that you have a very rich scholarship on comparative public law, and therefore this interaction is going to be a very mutual one, where we'll have insight from your end also. So when you talk about the Constitution, we are celebrating 75th year of our Republic. And if you look around and you analyze the strength of a Constitution in South Asian countries, you would find that the Indian Constitution is striving and is emerging as a strong one with every passing year, because it is one constitution which is governing the country right from day one, and there has been an absolute acceptance of the constitution by the people of the country, by the political leaders of the country, by the institutions, leaders of the country, as well as the way the judiciary has been giving a kind of purposive and very dynamic interpretation to different provisions. It is also accommodating the aspirations of the people, present and as well as future one.
Thank you very much. And what about the Indian federalism? That is a subject that also that you have been studying extensively. So how could we frame the Indian experience in the broader international one?
Indian federalism is very uniquely structured, I must say, where you would not find any one model which is in a way globally known to be really describing the Indian federalism, because it has got a symmetrical structure where power amongst the states and power between the center and the states, they are symmetrically divided. And also you do have a provision where powers are not symmetrically divided, which we call it as also a feature of asymmetric federalism, where in certain parts of the country you would find that a sort of autonomy given to the provinces, or for preserving their ethnicity, preserving their culture, preserving their local customs. So India is or Indian Constitution protects both, or in a way advances both symmetrical as well as asymmetrical federalism. And interestingly, what you find is that in order to address the issues, challenges which comes on federal front in India, we do have a different institutional arrangements for addressing the same. For example, Supreme Court has been given an original jurisdiction to decide the matter between the center and the states, or between the states. In addition to that, under the Constitution, we also have an institution called Interstate Council, which shall get into the issues of differences which arises between the center and the states. So these institutions, they take care of not only vertical federalism, but they also take care of horizontal federalism issues.
That's very interesting. And I will frame this reflection within a broader context of the general elections that are taking place right now for few other weeks, if I'm not wrong. This is a very long process. The biggest elections in the world, in the biggest democracy in the world. So it would be nice to have some insights from your side about what's going on out in India, and yes, and know more about it.
So very true. Right now, the electoral process is on, electoral process is on of a country which is described as a mother of democracy. And the fascinating part of this electoral process is that the entire process has been done with the help of technology. You have a electronic voting machine which captures the preferences of the electorate, and then the counting is going to take place on 4th of June when the future government or the next government will get announced. And the Election Commission, which is a constitutional body, they are been entrusted with the responsibility to conduct election freely and fairly in the country. And because they do have, this institution has got a constitutional status, they are independent and autonomous. They act independently. In fact, entire machinery, administrative machinery for these days, they directly come under the control of the Election Commission. So be it bureaucracy of the state, be it bureaucracy of the district, or at the central level, everything comes under the control of that, and they give direct instructions to the bureaucracy in order to ensure that election takes place in a very smooth manner. And distinctiveness of the Indian electoral process is the participation of urban and rural areas, in a very equitable way. It's not that those people who are living in rural areas, they are somewhere lagging behind. They participate in this celebration with the same vigor and zeal. And I would say that one of the reasons why the Indian Constitution is emerging strong, and it is being nurtured all these days, is because of the electoral process, which is periodically happening in the country right from day one. Every 5 years there's an election, unless and until the government falls because of other constitutional reasons. And then whatever is the outcome of the electoral process, that is accepted with all humility by the political parties. And that's what I would say is the strongest point in the Indian electoral democracy.
There is one aspect that also it is very interesting. I remember when I was in India during the election, that is the role of young generations in the process. So, how do you feel? You are a professor, of course, so you have a daily contact with young generations. So, how do you feel it? I mean, how they are growing in terms of political awareness, democratic awareness. So, if you can give us some elements of reflection on that, it would be also appreciated.
So in India, one becomes electorate at the age of 18 when the individual attains majority. And certainly, when you look at the entire, kind of the building process, the narrative which goes along with the electoral, process, you'd find that this young generation, they truly get a kind of connect with the agenda of the country, and that's what is the very significant one, because they believe that their participation is very vital for designing the future course of action for the country. And in fact, there is also a very strong appeal from the government side to encourage these young voters to come and vote. In fact, if you travel in aircraft, you'd find there's an announcement made that if you have become eligible, do register yourself as a voter and then cast your vote. If you go to prominent, public places, you'll find advertisement on this matter, and therefore, it is in a way the way the entire things have been portrayed. It seems like it is more of a kind of celebration of a democratic process, and where young people are being encouraged to come forward and participate and make your presence felt, and also determine be part of the entire decision making process of the future of the country.
Well, talking still about young generations and universities, for example, how is the situation, generally speaking? I know India is very big, but considering the law faculties in India, and especially we are interested, this is also a project, and this is part of a project in the School of Democracy chaired by Professor Pertrillo, who is a comparative lawyer. He's a comparative lawyer that it would be also interesting to see if comparative law has got a place in the formative path of Indian scholars.
Very true, because see, when it comes to constitutional law, the understanding of constitutional law is always built on a kind of comparative study, because it is not only about identifying the important developments in other jurisdictions which can guide the domestic development of law, but it is also like identifying the differences, so that any such references of other jurisdictions should be with caution. So comparative law becomes very important, and that's how I see India playing a significant role, and particularly the Indian court, where the Supreme Court on the important constitutional issues extensively looks into the foreign resources, the jurisdictions of other countries, and try to see that what are the similarities and differences, and how those similarities and differences in the constitutional values, the constitutional principles, they can nurture the Indian constitution, or how we need to also refrain in following something which is not accommodating the Indian ideas. So comparative constitutional law is very, very relevant for the growth of the constitutional law at the domestic level as well as at the international level. And I believe the Supreme Court of India is playing a very, very critical role in facilitating that study, in strengthening that entire, you may say, discourse.
I see. I have been several times in India, and I'm a bit familiar with the experience, and I know as every big country, it is a country with many contradictions also. And now we are shortly landing to the field of anti-corruption. So it's a big issue in India. I know that you are specialized, is one of the focus of your research. So it would be interesting to know more about that, more about the measure, more about the recent development, because of course there is a lot going on in India. So could you just picture a broader reflection about that?
Yeah, when you look at the development of constitutional law in last 3 decades or so in India, you would find that public law has been extensively used to contain this evil of corruption, which otherwise generally been seen as kind of criminal wrong and to be tackled under the criminal law, be it money laundering or similar criminal laws. But interestingly, what has been seen is that in last 3 decades or so, that the Supreme Court of India is also bringing in the arguments of violation of rights, and bringing the arguments of rights by drawing some parallel from good governance. So court is in a way reading that good governance is a facet of right. and thus corruption is adversely affecting good governance. In a landmark judgment of Vinit Narayan, Supreme Court has said that in cases of corruption, there is a requirement of continuous monitoring of the investigation. And building on this premise, the Supreme Court came up with a very innovative judicial remedy known as continuous mandamus. As you must be aware that the Supreme Court has been conferred with necessary power to issue writs. One of the important writs is mandamus, and it is a right in favor of individual to get constitutional remedy, which is again a unique provision under the Indian Constitution, where to get a right for the violation of fundamental right itself is a right under Article 32 of the Constitution. So what Supreme Court did is that Supreme Court sort of innovated and said that if it is a case involving people of higher positions, then they may influence the entire investigation, and therefore what is required is a kind of constant monitoring from the court, apex court. And that's how they came with the idea of continuous mandamus, which in a way says that there shall be a regular monitoring of the investigation by the apex court. The apex court would not anyway influence the decision making by the trial court. But then because such investigation should not unduly get influenced by the people sitting in the higher positions, court has said that we would like to monitor. So this is a very path-breaking, I would say, approach on containing corruption through public law remedy. In fact, there's another good instance where you'd find that the court intervening in the issue of spectrum allocation. And court said that if a spectrum allocation, which is a kind of natural resource, done without following a due process and where there is a loss to the public exchequer, then such allocation is unconstitutional. And all this court has done by invoking a very, again, distinctive and very different jurisdiction known as public interest litigation, where public spirited citizen can approach the court of law, particularly the Supreme Court, for the violation of rights of any individual. And on certain matters, the court has admitted the public interest litigation where it is not a matter of violation of rights, but it is also a matter of good governance.
It is extremely interesting also in comparative perspective, the role of the Supreme Court of India. Keeping our focus on the anti-corruption measure and linking it to the previous theme that it was the election, general election. We know that is an issue, and so I was wondering if there are signs of changes. There is something interesting to mention in terms of anti-corruption measures during the electoral campaign.
See, funding during election is always a contentious issue, and there has always been a kind of two schools of thought prevailing in this area. One, should the government fund the electoral process, or should it be, completely driven by political parties and they can approach the donor business houses and they can get the necessary funding? There has been an attempt done in the last 3-4 years so, where the government has come up with the necessary regulation of allowing the donors to donate to a political party, and provided in the regulation that such donation shall be not disclosed to the general public. So it is what is known as electoral bond. So the donor shall go and buy electoral bond from the designated bank, and that donor can buy the electoral bond in favor of a particular political party, and then money will go to the political party. The matter of validity of this regulation with regard to electoral bond came before the Supreme Court. And very recently the Supreme Court has read the non-disclosure part with the Article 19 of the Constitution of India, which talks about freedom of speech and expression. It said that when in good number of cases the Supreme Court has held that right to information is part of freedom of speech and expression, then not informing the electorate about the donor would somewhere adversely affect the entire principle of transparency in this of the process. And therefore the Supreme Court has struck down the regulation on this ground, that by not allowing the information to be further transmitted to the people is not in favor of the accountability, not in favor of the transparency of the government. So what is required is to be seen is that a middle course is to be devised where funding should come to the political parties, because the electoral process is cost intensive one, we know very well. But at the same time, that how to maintain the balance where undue harassment should not happen to the donor. At the same time, the public accountability is also maintained. So some kind of midway we need to devise. I am very sure that after the election, again there will be a debate on coming up with the kind of suitable design to address this issue.
Thank you very much, Professor Shankar. It is very interesting, and there is a lot to think about the financing of politics also in Italy in comparative perspective. Perhaps we will talk further about it, but for the moment, I really thank you very much for your presence. And I hope to see you again in Italy. I hope to see more on Indian constitutional law also in Italian universities.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in this talk show. Thank you.